Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. We're starting this today on what is a fairly lazy Sunday, or like, not lazy, deservedly restful. I've been feeling kind of sick-ish the last week, like good but sick. My lips have just been really dry, and as well my eyes keep watering, which I think is making me feel like a zombie, which is why I've changed my glasses for a little bit rather than my contacts, just if that makes a difference. Anyway, let's talk about my reading plans for this week. There's a few things I want to read and try and keep on top of my reading. So I have just started reading Tomie by Junji Ito. It's like a horror manga all about this girl who seems to be able to like regenerate, and then she keeps causing trouble, but more like causing other people to go crazy or murder people. I'm not very far into it, like this far. You can't really see a little bit, but it's a graphic, so I'm hoping I can actually get through this today. During my lazy Sunday, I'm kind of alternating between reading this and also adding some captions to some videos that I had missed. So there's that. There's a couple of other things I want to read physically later in the week. Firstly, I've got an ebook of, is an ebook physical reading? Anyway, I've got an ebook of Into the Darkness by Lee Murray. It's like a novella in the Tanya McKenna series. I think it's really short, so I'm just going to try and read that to get that ticked off the TBR. I read the first page yesterday, and it seems like it's set in France. So the main story was like this creature horror set in the wilderness in New Zealand, but kind of one of the army guys and also one of the scientists are like having a relaxing holiday in France after those events. And all that had happened so far is like some woman had stumbled out and everyone was like, don't touch her, she's cursed. So I'll try to get to that. So hopefully that'll be kind of like scary and fun. And then I also have this Wizard of the Grove, but this is a bind up of 2 books. I'm just going to read the first book, which is Child of the Grove. So I'm looking forward to that fantasy as well. This is one, I don't really know much about it. Just this girl kind of being raised as the last wizard, and there's some kind of prophecy that she's going to help defeat this great evil. I kind of feel like I read this when I was a teen, but I don't remember, so I'm hoping when I get into it, 1, I'll really love it, and 2, maybe I'll remember having read it before. So there's that. As well, I do have a couple of audiobooks that I'm reading, or that I'm going to read. So firstly, I've got Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. This one, I started reading it just this morning actually when I went to return my library books, and I don't think it's what I thought it was. I thought it had some kind of time travel element. I'm sure that's why I added it to my TBR. But so far, it seems more like it's this young girl and her mother is kind of trying to take down the empire or something, and she set this young girl up to become part of this emperor's, young emperor prince. The guy who's gonna become emperor, but he's a kid at the moment, set her up to become part of his court, kind of. But she's also part fairy, and the fairy that's her father had granted her mother 3 wishes, but the 3rd wish has to be granted by the daughter. I'll be honest, it's quite a lot of world building, but the world building's done in a really weird hinting kind of way, because we're following the perspective of this young girl who doesn't really understand what's going on around her, so you have to kind of figure out the world building from little bits and pieces, because the girl doesn't even understand it herself what's going on. And that kind of world building, or when there's a lot of world building, can be harder in audiobook form because it's just kind of continuing on and you don't have a chance to pause and absorb things, and like you don't see any of the names written down, so it can be hard to remember all the names. So I'm not very far into that, but I will keep reading that. And as well, the other audiobook I have is Sisters of the Snake by, I've forgotten, but the authors are twin sisters, and I think the story is going to have some element of twins in it as well, which is why I picked it up, as well as I think it's going to be based around Indian mythology, which I'm interested in as well. So that's my reading plans for the week. Also this week I'm getting my first COVID vaccine, which is going to be exciting, and I'm going to see my gastroenterology doctor for the first time since last year, I think. So we'll see what he has to say. Oh, I need to get a blood test for that tomorrow. And I don't know what else is happening this week, but we will see, and hopefully manage to fit in a decent amount of reading.
Caught up in the web of my own fantasy, choking on the words that you said to me. Now I'm bathing in the aftermath, but I'm never going never going back. Let your soul get too close to me. Yeah. Your heart is an ocean and I felt deep.
Good morning. So it's nice and early and I just got my blood test. I was afraid there was going to be a big queue because last time I tried to come real early before work there was a massive queue. This time there wasn't, which was good. However, it still took forever because she couldn't find my vein. So not only do I have this plaster, I also went on this arm because she had to try twice, and then it still took quite a lot of digging around for her to actually get some blood out. I think it's just too early and too cold, and I have terrible veins anyway. Also, I need glasses that don't glare. I could probably do a better angle, but it's a bit hard to make things work in the car. Oh, this is kind of better. Is it? Not really. So I did want to update you on my reading because I am now about halfway through Tomie. Yep. About halfway through. I'm really liking it. In the beginning I wasn't so sure. So we've got this woman named Tomie, and it's like she's really beautiful and men fall in love with her, but then when they don't get what they want from her, and she's quite like not very nice to them, so when they don't get what they want from her they tend to want to kill her or hurt her. And when she suffers physical trauma she splits into like multiple versions of herself. So it's like slowly escalating and getting crazier and crazier, which I remember is what I really loved about Uzumaki, which is this one all about spirals, and it escalates. So I think as I'm reading it, the more it escalates, the more I'm loving it, and I'm looking forward to see what will happen in the second half. I was also this morning going to try and read some more of Raybearer, but BorrowBox wouldn't load while I was driving, so that was very annoying. I hate it when the library apps decide they need to connect to the internet and then they won't play when you're not able to properly connect to the internet. Anyway, I'll try and load it up again for my drive home, and then I have to do some work, but I'll check in with you guys again later.
If you set yourself on fire, I never let you burn. I would smoke you till my lungs hurt and love you till I'm dirt. Oh, I'm not sure where all this goes. What I do know is I'll never let you go. When my world is falling apart, you're always there first. When I felt like I could give up, you showed me my worth. I'd follow you into that desert, and if worst came to worst.
Hello, so I just walked home in the rain. Why did I walk home in the rain? Well, because traffic was crazy. And why was traffic crazy? Well, partly because it was raining and people can't drive when it's raining, that's the rules. But as well, we are back in lockdown. And everyone was driving around, panic shopping, trying to get home. The traffic was a disaster. I went and I got my vaccination, my first shot, which was very exciting. And I got it just before the lockdown announcement. So I got my vaccination at 5 p.m. The lockdown announcement was at 6 p.m. And they've put vaccinations on hold for 48 hours while they sort out how they want to change the process while we're in lockdown. But then all the buses were also super full because I was traveling home at peak hour time. So I ended up catching a different bus that was less full. It was still quite full, but at least it came because there were a bunch of cancelled buses as well. Anyway, very exciting night. I had to catch the bus to a different station, and then I could have caught another bus home, but I decided to walk in the rain instead and listen to the announcement about what was going to happen with the lockdown. And we're in level 4, which is our highest level of lockdown in New Zealand, which pretty much means don't leave the house except for going to the supermarket, and in the supermarket there'll be all sorts of rules. You're also allowed to go out and exercise, but stay away from everyone, which I kind of like. I quite like that you can like cross the road to avoid people and it's socially acceptable. I feel like you should be able to do that all the time, which you kind of can now in this COVID world. Anyway, at least 7 days of this full lockdown and then we'll see what happens, I guess. I am glad that our government is taking things seriously. Hopefully that means this will be shorter than it could be otherwise, but everything's all just a bit crazy at the moment because of that. I was going to film tonight, but I'm not going to do that, so I guess my wrap-up's going to be even later. But anyway, let's stop talking about lockdown. There'll be plenty of time to keep talking about it, I'm sure. And like overall, I think you can tell like it's kind of crazy, but for me at least, I can still work from home. I think our government does have a pretty good support packages for a lot of businesses, not everyone, but still better than it could be. Most of the people I know are fine and safe, and like hard lockdown straight away is the right call to get over it quicker. Anyway, let's talk about reading, because this is meant to be a reading vlog. I last night finished Tomie, and I did like it. I do feel like it didn't really escalate to the same level that Uzumaki did. And maybe kind of the middle-ish is where it peaked for me. There were definitely some really interesting ideas that Junji Ito explored around this Tomie character, and I feel like there could just be endless stories about Tomie, really. She's not really very nice, but the things that happen to her are also horrible, and it is just really interesting the way it explores this idea. So I liked it, and as well, this is my 100th book of the year, so I've hit my Goodreads reading goal. I mean, I always knew that I would probably read at least 100 books, but exciting to still say 100 books. I did it. What else? I also read a little bit of Raybearer today. I think I'm about a third of the way through. I would have got more of the way through, except I was listening to lockdown stuff instead of listening to that on the way home. And I am really enjoying it. There's some stuff with the magic that I really like. So I can't remember what I told you last time, but we've got this emperor, or this prospective emperor. This kid who's going to be the emperor. What is the word for that? Anyway, he needs to pick this council of 12 children. They're going to be his counselors, and each one that he chooses is from a different area of the empire, and as well he forms this magical bond with them that then gives him this like protection against different kinds of deaths. So by the time he's got his 12 counselors, he's pretty much unkillable. But as well, the bond kind of means that these counselors need to be around each other, or otherwise they start getting sick. And the way that some of the selections were done was really emotional. I really like the characters and their relationships. I sometimes feel like some of that stuff goes on a little bit more than I would like, but overall I'm still enjoying it, and I think I can see why a lot of people would like that. There are bits of the world building that I feel like I'm not quite getting, and I can't tell if that's because I'm not paying enough attention or if it's because it's not explaining it properly. It could be either, to be honest. But I am really liking it. I don't really know entirely what's going to happen next, although maybe I have some ideas. Maybe. I will try and listen to that some more during lockdown, although I won't be commuting during lockdown, which generally means I read less audiobooks. I would try and go out for a lot more walks, but one, it's terrible weather at the moment, and two, the Delta variant is much more spreadable, so I don't know how much I want to go walking around where other people might have been breathing. We'll see how the news kind of develops, I guess. Anyway, I am going to go and have a nice lockdown bath, and maybe just watch some booktube rather than reading, because I feel like there's too many things happening. I'm still chatting with lots of people about what's happening, and I don't probably have the focus to do any reading tonight. And that's fine. You just gotta roll with the punches during lockdown. Hi, so I just filmed like a whole little clip about my day, and then I realized I was not actually filming, and I'm about to film my wrap up, and I don't think that's a good sign, but never mind. It was kind of a long day. I wasn't feeling very motivated for work. My arm kind of hurts a bit from the vaccine, although less than this morning. Just kind of a big day checking in on everyone. You can never really tell. It's often the people who you think are going to be fine that aren't fine with lockdown, but my teams have a lot of practice working remotely, so they're mostly okay. I wasn't feeling particularly motivated today, but I got through the day, and that's the main thing. Also, it was hailing today, awful weather. But anyway, let me tell you about some reading, because last night, even though I said I wasn't going to read, I did read a little bit. So I finished off, or had I started it? Yes, I had started it. I finished off Into the Darkness by Lee Murray. So this is a little novella. I think I already told you about it. Set in the same world as this New Zealand creature horror that I had read earlier in the year or last year. I really liked that. This novella was super short, and unfortunately because of that it didn't really have the elements that I liked from the first book. So we've pretty much got this New Zealand Army officer and the scientist woman, and they're relaxing in France, and they get involved in this like curse thing that's going on. This woman collapses and everyone's like, oh, don't touch her, she's cursed, and all these crabs come out of her, and there's a baby, and it was very intense. The very beginning I was like, yes, this is so action-packed and I'm loving it, but then they went off to find this creature, this monster, and fight it, and it was just this New Zealand guy with some French soldiers who didn't really speak English. And I think what I really liked from the first book was the way it built the anticipation about what was going to happen. You knew what was happening with the different characters, and you knew how the decisions they were making, because they didn't have the information the other characters had, the decisions they were making were gonna get them into shit. And like that feeling of anxiety, and also just building that care for the different characters, was what I really liked about it. This was just too short. There were no real relationships between the characters because most of them couldn't even talk to each other. So like, it was fine, it was written fine, but it was just a little short piece of nothing, kind of. But it did have at the end a little section about the synopsis of the next 2 books in that series, and I read the synopsises and I am excited to continue the series. I just think the novella was not really for me. Then also after work, while I was building up my momentum to film, I did start reading Wizard of the Grove, or at least I'm only going to read the first book in this bind-up, which is Child of the Grove. So the first little epilogue was basically this creation myth about the world. The mother created everything, and then chaos also came out of the darkness, and they had a son called Death. Death wanted somebody to rule over, and so she created the humans, but to make up for the fact that they were going to be under the power of death, she gave them the ability to create. So they created gods in the hope that gods would protect them against death. They didn't, so they stopped worshipping the gods. However, you can't uncreate gods, so gods traveled the world and slept with humans and created wizards, who are the children of the gods and the humans. The wizards did some awful shit, were terrible, terrible people, destroyed everything in their lust for power. Then they kind of screwed things up and they ended up all dying off. Or supposedly, I believe that this main girl character is going to be the last wizard. However, the first chapter we're mainly following this prince who is actually the son of the mother and this king. Or not the mother, he's the son of the first woman that the mother created and the king, because there's this grove where these first women all live, and they're kind of like, what's the dryads? Tree people? Anyway, there's a lot in the epilogue in the first chapter, and I am really liking it. We're on the verge of war. The prince has some kind of magic in him that he got from his mother, but I don't know more than that yet, but I am excited to read it. I'm really enjoying the writing style, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. As I didn't leave the house today, I didn't read any of Raybearer. I don't know when I'm going to leave the house. I know that a lot of people are like, oh my god, I can't believe New Zealand's going into lockdown over 1 case, but we already have 10 cases now, so we know it's going to go up exponentially, so better to lock down when you have 1 case than wait till you have a lot more and things are even worse. You know? Hard and fast. That's New Zealand's approach, and I am totally behind it, but I think you just want to wait a few days to see how crazy things go. The first case they found does live not that far from me, and I think one of the people who has COVID has been in places nearby where I live, so fingers crossed I haven't run into any of them. I feel okay, so hopefully. I mean, I still have a sore arm from the vaccine, but mostly I feel fine. So what am I doing now? I'm going to film a video, and then I'll probably read some more of this tonight because I think I won't be able to resist picking it up.
I would love to be your stars and moon, your sun. I would love to be that one. I'd love to be the one to make you laugh. I'd love to be the one who'd always say that I love you back.
Hello, so I survived a couple of busy days at work. We had to like kind of rejig everything to be remote because normally that would have been my 2 big in the office days with lots of meetings, but I survived, and now it's Saturday. I'm having a fairly quiet lockdown day at home because there's not much other choice. but honestly, I'm really liking it. It's a good chance to catch up on things. As well, I got the results from my blood test, and I'm pretty sure the reason why I've been having like really bad circles under my eyes and feeling really zombie-ish is because I'm low in iron. And honestly, every time I get blood test results back saying I'm low in iron, I'm like, oh, that's why I've been so tired. I feel like I should be able to recognize the signs and know without a blood test, but apparently I cannot. Anyway, let me tell you about my reading. Last night I did go for a little lockdown walk. It was really nice. And I got past halfway in Raybearer and some very exciting things happened. I'm really liking the way things are being set up. A couple of our characters have kind of had to go off on this journey to try and fix a problem. Trying to be vague so I don't spoil things. But I really like the effect that this thing that happened had on people's relationships, and there's a lot of angst, but it's like really justified angst because this situation that the characters are in is actually really difficult, but the characters also don't feel a lot of time necessarily feeling sorry for themselves. They're just trying to deal with it. There's also really been some hints about the bigger world that I think are going to play into the bigger plot. Like, I think that there's a bunch of things that our main characters don't know that when they discover them is going to mean there's a whole bunch more drama, and I'm super looking forward to that. So I'm trying to decide at the moment. It's been really grey and rainy all day, and even though it rained on my lockdown walk last night and it was actually quite nice, when I started my walk it was nice, and then it gradually went to being rainy, and it was actually good when it was rainy because everyone else disappeared and I didn't have to keep avoiding people because there were no people. But today it's already cold and rainy, and I'm not sure I can motivate myself to go out in the rain, even if that would give me a good chance to continue Raybearer. I'll see if I can motivate myself. Otherwise I'm going to probably walk around the house, because otherwise I'm not going to get any exercise today, because so far I've just been sitting around mucking around on the internet and I did edit a couple of videos. The other thing that I have kind of been reading is Child of the Grove, although to be honest I think I've only read like 2 chapters. The problem is that I thought we were going to get to follow this cool girl, but instead we're following this prince and he's just in a war, and I'm never a fan of stories that are just about war, and I'm pretty sure that the story is going to move past the war, but I'm struggling to move through that section. I'm thinking about tonight just staying home. Maybe if I do my walk around the house I can read this and get far enough through it that I'm into the part of the story that hopefully I will like. Maybe. We'll see. Have I read anything else? No, not really. Overall, not much else going on. Just lots of people getting tests and lots of new cases. But pretty much as we expected. So I guess I'll go and see if I can find some motivation for some reading or something. Hello, so it is Sunday afternoon. I was going to film today, but I guess I still could, but I'm probably not going to. I just had a really slow start to the day. I did go for a nice little lockdown walk, and while I was doing that I listened to a bunch of Raybearer, so I'm now 3/4 of the way through and I'm actually really loving it. I love like the twists and turns and the world and the characters and their relationships and the way that the magic is all twisted into everything. And I'm really interested to see what the climax of this first book is going to be. And I'm also really glad that it's only a duology. And I think the second book just came out, which is good because I'll be able to read it very soon, which is ideal because I don't think I would want to wait to find out what's going to eventually happen. It's possible I might even be able to finish that later tonight. What I have been doing today, instead of filming like I was going to, instead I accidentally started rearranging my lounge, which is why I'm sitting in this weird position, because my sofa is currently kind of in the middle of things and I've got another sofa behind a sofa, and I started bringing my bookshelves into the lounge. I'm not sure that that's going to be any good, but I'm going to try it as an experiment. And I've kind of moved my TV over here. I don't know. It's quite a lot of work for an experiment that once I move everything around I might hate it. And also once I move everything around I'm not really going to have any room for this couch that I'm sitting on right now. But my long-term plan is to get rid of these couches because they're kind of broken. Their springs are all broken and it's very uncomfortable. And I kind of wanted to like downsize to just one smaller couch rather than two, because honestly I don't need that many couches. I have this many in case I have guests come around, but honestly I pretty much never have guests come around, and I don't even really like to have guests around, so why do I need so much furniture? Honestly, a fun thing to do is to count how many seats you have in your house per person. I think it's been a while since I counted it, but I have something like 21 seats and it's ridiculous for one person. So if we get rid of this 3-seater couch, that's 3 seats down, which is much better. Anyway, the other thing that I have been reading is Child of the Grove, and I managed to get past the war bit, and then it was weird because it jumped forward like 4 generations in time, and even some of those generations were longer lived than a normal human, so it jumped forward in time quite a bit. And then we were following a princess, and I thought maybe she's going to be this girl on the front, but she wasn't. We spent another chapter with another generation who then, through strange circumstances, gave birth to this girl who was actually the Child of the Grove. Is she? Or is the other guy was the Child of the Grove, and she's actually the Last Wizard, which is the second book in this duology. Is everything I'm reading at the moment a duology? Anyway, I've now got about 100 pages to go, and we're following this girl, Crystal, as she tries to take down this wizard that's been causing all these wars and all this trouble. The wizard, for his part, is just kind of like really bored. He knew there was a prophecy that she was going to come and potentially take him out, and he just let it happen because he was like, well, at least then it won't be so boring. So there's definitely some really funny bits in this book that I have really enjoyed, and I like the overall story. The only thing I would say is it's told in this very like high level way where it's just kind of skimming over events and every now and then drops into kind of like the details of a scene, but we don't really get to follow along with our characters exactly or like get to know them very well. So it's kind of strange. It's almost written in a very kind of fairy tale myth kind of way. Like it's about the characters, but it's not really about the characters. I don't know, and I don't know if I like it, but I am very interested to see where the story will go. So I'm gonna try and finish that tonight, actually. Do I have time while also finishing off rearranging my lounge? Possibly not, but we'll see how far I can get through things. Hello, so it's now Monday. Last night though, I did quite late finish off both Child of the Grove and Raybearer, and in the end I ended up actually really liking both of them. Wizard of the Grove, like I feel like some of the beginning could have been deleted, although I also think that that beginning really sets you up to understand how much effort has gone in from the elder races and the people around this girl to kind of set her up into a position where she can take on this other wizard. So in some ways it feels like a lot of setup, but also for the story that's being told, maybe that setup fits. Anyway, the ending was very clever. There was a lot of fun stuff and I just really liked it. I'm not really sure where the second book in this duology bind up is gonna go, but I guess now hard to talk about without spoilers. But regardless, I hope that I can get to that second book soon because I really enjoyed that. Then for Raybearer, I really enjoyed that. Although what I would say with Raybearer is I kept thinking, because I'm listening to the audiobook, so in the audiobook you can't necessarily easily see how close you are to the end. There were multiple chapter endings where there's like a pause before the next chapter begins, and I thought that was the end of the book. I'd be like, oh yeah, good ending. And then it would keep going. And I think some of that stuff where it kept going could have possibly been saved for the next book. But again, it set up some really interesting things for the next book. Probably more so than this. This one kind of just left us with like the open question of what's going to happen now with a certain character. Whereas Raybearer has set the main character up with a really big challenge for the next book, as well as having had a whole bunch of traumatic stuff happen to her at the end of things. And there were so many discoveries about the world. I've seen a lot of hype for Raybearer and I didn't really believe it, to be honest, even though I picked it up. I mostly picked it up because I thought it was time travel, which I was wrong. There was no time travel. But regardless, I'm glad that I picked it up because I really enjoyed it. I think it really deserves the hype. It's really clever, there's an interesting world, the magic is really interesting, and the way that it's woven into the plot is really cool. And also like the way it influences the relationships and just everything comes together really well. Probably one of my favorite YA fantasies that I've read this year. Anyway, overall, I didn't read as much as I was hoping this week. However, since we had a surprise lockdown, I think that's fine. And I also think my reading next week should be pretty good because hopefully I'll be getting used to lockdown and I'll be able to spend more time reading. Maybe. You never know how lockdown's gonna go. Anyway, I'm gonna go and do some other filming, but do let me know if you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video because I would love to talk more with you about them down in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well and I will see you next time.